to another episode of Behind the Bar podcast, brought to you by the coaches and clients of RT Fitness Durham, Sunderland, and of course the Barbell Club and the Barbell Club Online, where we take you from complete beginner to photo shoot level results. On today's show, we have our coach Dan Burkett, the biomechanics coach. Today, we just want to bust all of those myths they are around nutrition, training, and whatever bullshit you've heard it in the past. So yeah, Dan breaks it all down. I ask him the questions. He breaks it all down in always the best way he can. And yeah, another brilliant one. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a share, and most of all for us, just drop us a comment so that we can comment back. And obviously, the more feedback we get, the better the shows will be. So enjoy. So this is the first time ever that I'm sitting on this side. Dan just sat in the seat and didn't ask.
It felt right.
But yes, welcome back. This is probably the fastest switch for a guest to come straight back on. But do you know what it is? I'm just going to jump straight into them all.
Yeah, go for it.
So you wanted myths, and I've come up with the myth questions, so you don't know any of obviously these. But I have kept it broad, just because I think obviously if we got too far into the details of myths,
I'd bore people. I'd turn them off.
Well, yeah, but it would bore, and it doesn't fucking matter.
No,
does it? Like some of the really tiny ones.
It's that whole thing. At the end of the day, if you want to know more, there's resources online that you could look at, and there's thousands of people out there that will give you that info.
But I think for our clients, audience, I think these ones. I don't know if they're too broad, to be fair. But fuck it, we'll just jump straight in. So, does lifting weights make women bulky?
Well, it's such a hard one to answer because it's resistance training. You're going to develop muscle mass, and I look at it and go, surely you price it into your thinking. Like, when people are after this toned and defined look, what you're basically wanting is a reduction of body fat. So if you're resistance training and you're in a calorie deficit and you get your reduced body fat, you're going to look good. If you don't reduce your body fat and you just continue to put on muscle, yes, it's going to look a little bit bulky. But you've got to look at it and go, you price that into your thinking, because it's resistance training at the end of the day. You don't do resistance training to lose fat. You do resistance training to get stronger and generally, I would hope, to put muscle on. So it will do if you are a genetic anomaly that can put loads of size on. But I have been trying for years. And it's happening slowly. It's a slow game.
Mm-hmm. It's. I think one of the biggest myths around this one is as soon as they touch a weight, they'll get bulky.
Yeah, and it's such a slow process. I mean, the latest study that I come out and read, it was at a push. It was 8 ounces of muscle put on in 8 weeks. And I don't know what the conversion is, but 8 ounces of muscle is minuscule. Mm-hmm. You think about 8 ounces across your entire frame.
Is that for newbie gains as well? Or?
No, it was. I think it was intermediate lifters. So you presume then for a beginner it would be a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But you also look at it and go, when you're that new to training, in the nicest way, your intensity is much lower than what somebody else can put in, because you haven't built the skill within movements, so you physically can't push them as hard. And then if you get really sciencey, you can't even access the high thresh motor units at that level anyway. So you look at it and you go, in your first 8 weeks, you're going to feel stronger, you're going to be more confident, you probably won't look that different. So yeah, the whole bulky thing, as I say, people have been trying for years and years, and for some people it happens, for some people it doesn't, but I honestly wouldn't worry about it.
And if anything, it's a good thing, because you know you're actually putting on some muscle mass, and that's what you're lifting weights for in the first place.
You've got instant validation. You know it's working. It is an instant form of direct feedback of what I am doing is correct. And again, you can either follow the science, you can not follow the science, you can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, it all works to some degree. So do the bit you enjoy, and you know what? If you find that you look too bulky as a result of it, just drop some body fat, and then that's problem solved.
And you'll look better underneath.
100%. You'll weigh the same, you'll look better. Things will fit nicer as well.
So women, lift.
Yes.
Don't worry about that one. So is it a myth or not really, is it? Is that a myth?
Do you know, I actually wouldn't say it's a myth, purely because, again, I think you're lifting for that purpose.
Yeah.
Like from a male perspective, you're lifting for that purpose. I think from a female perspective, it's a little bit more sort of longevity based, because you look at sort of the effect of post-menopause, and you look at dropping of estrogen production, bone density and stuff like that. So on that side, it is vital, you know, to keep it up and to keep resistance training in. But you look at it and you go, if, as I say, if you're too fearful of that bulky look, then just cut a bit of body fat, and it will solve that as quick as anything.
There we go. Next one. Is it true that you need to do hours of cardio to lose weight?
No.
These are very broad, aren't they?
They are very broad. But you know what? I'm actually, I like that question, because I've now dieted 4 times. And the last time that I did it, I actually didn't do any cardio. So I'm now somebody that I put cardio in year round from a health perspective. It's not much. It's 15 minutes at the end of a session. Like it hardly adds anything to my day.
What do you class as cardio?
So for me, I operate in about 130 to 140 beats per minute. I'm not super anal on it. I'll just have my watch on and it will tell me if my heart rate is in that zone.
Well, doing what though?
Just on the bike, either the bike
bike,
or if I've trained legs, it will just be an incline walk, because the bike after legs is grim and I can't hack it. I don't want to. But the last time I dieted, I actually took cardio out. I upped steps because steps are lower impact and lower fatigue than cardio, but I dropped cardio, and all of my deficit basically came from, as I say, extra steps and a drop in food. And it was probably the most amount of body fat that I've lost in that shorter period of time, and I felt fresh throughout the entire thing. I'm not going to say that you don't need it, because there will be a time and a place where if you are really stalling and that body fat is not shifting and you can't afford to take any more away from food, you might need to add a little bit more activity. And whether that's steps or cardio is kind of irrelevant as long as you can maintain it. So cardio by default, no, does not burn fat, because it is all to do with how much energy have I taken in and how much have I, expelled. And we don't have a direct way to measure that apart from, is your body fat reducing? Because you look at even like smartwatches, as long as you're keeping your smartwatch as a constant, so like if you're wearing a Fitbit every day, great, because you've got like a rough metric you can go by. Even if it's not accurate, you know that day by day, it's going to give you rough details. Yeah. But if you wore a Fitbit Monday and then an Apple Watch Tuesday and then a Samsung Watch on Wednesday, then they're going to give you these numbers that go absolutely everywhere. And that's where it's not reliable. So cardio is a tool, but as a thing on its own, it shouldn't be viewed as a fat burning thing. It should, like resistance training, it's a health promoting tool.
Yeah.
Think heart health.
Other Dan did a brilliant little reel on it before. He explained the two in such a short, detailed thing. I think the way you said it there though, would you class cardio as is it like the 160 beats per minute higher?
Not necessarily. I mean, to be honest, again, all the definitions kind of get like mashed up. So,
because I think people always take cardio as running, cycling,
for me,
HIIT class.
For me, within my training, I view cardio as it is its own tool that I've intentionally gone to do. So although I hit my daily steps, I wouldn't consider my steps as cardio. I just consider that is my bare minimum expenditure for the day. So if, for example, I out of nowhere decided I'm going to walk up that really big hill today and it was like a 1 hour walk, cool, I'll count that as cardio, because it's got my heart rate higher than me doing my normal steps would, and it's something extra that I've added in on top. Yeah. But like if I was just to go out and do my 10K steps, I don't consider that cardio. That's my baseline activity there.
I'm exactly the same. So if I was to go, say, on the stepper, which I do sometimes on a Sunday for an hour, I would class that as cardio, even though it's just a fast walk. Yeah. It's not running, it's not cycling. 100%. I think people always take cardio as in like like that kind of thing.
Because I've always viewed it from like a fat loss.
Fucking sex noises. Come out weird.
I've always viewed it from like a fat loss perspective, especially with cardio as well. Like you don't want to be beating yourself up. Like if somebody said to me, "What's your preferred form of cardio from a fat loss perspective?" I would say, for example, get away from a rowing machine because it is far too exerting. Just get yourself on something that you can maintain for a long-ish period of time. So like a low incline walk, the bike, cross trainer. To an extent, the Stairmaster, I've never been a fan of it because I I find myself after 10 minutes, I'm absolutely cooked. I have no more in the tank.
I've never done it long enough to ever feel it, to be fair.
Brutal. Again, like from like a quad and calf perspective, it's like doing another leg day for me. Right. So I've never been that much of a fan of it, but just, I've always preferred the slow and steady, because even when you look at cardio from a perspective of like building your running capacity, you now see people nowadays heading towards like you do, let's say like one faster run per week, but the majority of your work is the slower paced runs, because you've got to look at this fast paced stuff is so fatiguing, it's so exerting, and how many people do one of those sessions, they then go home and they sit on the sofa all day because again, they're cooked, they've got nothing left in the tank. It would be like coming into the gym and everything you did in here was 1, 2 or 3 reps. Don't get me wrong, you'd look at it and go, feel strong, feel great. But if you're putting 1 rep max after 1 rep max after 1 rep max, you're going to be spent. Mm-hmm. You know, your central nervous system at the end of the day is just going to be like absolutely rare, and it's not sustainable. So I would say, yeah, just slow, steady, keep yourself moving. And you know, if you really don't want to do cardio, just do extra steps. It's what I did on my last one, and it worked a treat.
It is. I think especially where the tiredness factor, it's like, is it true that you need to do hours of cardio to lose weight? So generally, for the people who lose weight, yes, you need to be in the calorie deficit in any way. So when you're in the calorie deficit, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to burn yourself out further.
Exactly. And I think you have to look at it as well. You've got to look at it as well and go, how much food are you intaking? So like if you're somebody that, let's say you've been dieting for a good couple of weeks and you're, let's say, 1,200 calories, or no, let's say 1,600. You have a degree where you could either pull more food, or you've got relatively enough, depending on your size, that you could perform the extra cardio. But if you're somebody that's already down there on 1,100 calories a day, do you have it in you to hop on and do cardio? Probably not. You're the kind of person that maybe needs 1 or 2 weeks away from the diet, and then you come back into it just to alleviate stress and fatigue. But you've got to look at, the way I look at it from fat loss is look at the levers that you can pull from and go, right, which one at which time makes more sense? So fat loss perspective, at the start of a diet, cardio might make more sense. You've got the most fat to lose, you've got the most energy available, you've got the most food in you. But at the very end, when you are, let's be real, you're finished, you're a dead man walking at that point, do you want to go and do 45 minutes on the Stairmaster? Because I wouldn't. No.
If you're on 1,100 calories, I mean, the only cardio I'd be doing is running a bath. And that's it. Right, number 3. Do you really need to stretch before every workout to prevent injury?
People go so back and forwards on this, and I think sometimes the best way in order to prep yourself is stretching under load. And it sounds really cliche because it's something that's come in really big in the last few years, but sometimes stretching under load, doing a mild form of the movement you're going to do, is perhaps the best way. Yeah. And what I mean by that is if you are getting ready to squat heavy, does foam rolling and then going into your squats actually benefit you? And I would say the argument is there's going to be some benefit, but I wouldn't rely all on it. So if you can then incorporate a little bit of foam rolling or static stretching, then alongside, for example, building up into those heavier squats, then that's probably the way you want to go. So if you're working up to a 100 kilo squat, could you do 10 reps of the bar? Could you then do 5 or 6 reps with 50? Could you then do 3 or 4 reps with 70 or 80 and then build into 100? The way to look at it that I think a lot of people don't talk about though is you've got to think when you do statically stretch, what is that doing? It's stretching the muscle and it's forcing blood out. So I generally would prefer to use something a little bit more dynamic. So you see obviously with you guys, I'll get you to work through like lunge type patterns, squat type patterns, glute bridges off the floor because it's directing blood flow in. Yeah. Whereas if I got you to hold a static glute stretch for 15, 20 seconds, if anything, it's forcing blood out of the target muscle. We want warmth. We want to promote, for use of a better word, it's suppleness at the end of the day. We want as much blood flow into the muscle, the joint, the tendons. So I would say it's good. Just pick the right stretches. Yeah. Don't go and hold a quad stretch for 20 seconds. I would rather you do something dynamic that actually gets the quad working rather than something that's just stretching it for stretching's sake.
It's funny, isn't it? Because of all these years of there's always debate. What's best? And for most people, and for us lazy gym people who go to the gym by ourselves, like when we do a couple of warm-up sets, it's probably the better stuff just to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you've also, like, it sounds really, really bad coming from like a coaching perspective, but you look like time efficiency as well. And don't get me wrong, the older and older we get, we'd probably have to spend more time getting warm and into the session. But the last thing I want to do, if I'm training for an hour and 15 minutes, is spend 20 minutes stretching, getting ready for that session. So like the way that I would generally program my sessions is I go, right, what is a slightly smaller muscle group that requires less warming up time ready to go? So like for me, I would train through like a lateral raise on an upper day first because I'm getting the whole shoulder girdle warm. So if I then go into either a chest press or a row after that, the shoulder's warm and ready to go. All I need to do now is get blood in the chest or blood in the back, and then that's done. So like for my lat raises, I might do probably 3 warm-up sets, maybe a little bit of banded work to get ready, but then 3 warm-up sets, something that's 2 sets on a lighter weight, 1 or 2 reps at something that is similar to the load that I am lifting in my main set, and then I'm just in. There is a part of it, I can't lie, there is laziness from a coaching perspective. You just want to train, you want to get in, you want to get out. But then I think, you know, as you can say, when we then have clients in, that warm-up is a lot more serious.
Yeah.
Because we're then, like, in the nicest way, if I injure myself, yes, I care, but I'm not going to sue me.
Yes.
Whereas the last thing I want is to then have an injured client on the record. Again, like, you have public liability insurance, but you don't want to use it. Like,
no, we don't.
I want that to be a thing that I've purchased, and I never see it again until it comes to renewing it.
Yeah.
So I look at it and go from like a client perspective, like as my clients will see, we'll do banded stuff, we'll then do a little bit of dynamic, then it'll be 1 warm-up set or 2 warm-up sets potentially on the movement that is in the lift that we're going to do, and then you're just in after that. And that is, I think, how most people prep for a session now, because it's time efficient, and I think it is very injury preventative as well.
Nice. I mean, what was the actual question there? Do you really need to stretch before every workout to prevent an injury? Yeah.
But I would advise it. I mean, if you're one of those people that walks in and you've got bench and you just jump straight on in, then I would say you're open to an injury or 2 here and there.
At least do a few warm-ups, that's the thing. And especially if it's cold. If it's a cold, like a warehousey type thing like this, then if it's a nice plush place and you've just come out of a sauna, then
especially if you're one of the 6 a.m. clients and you know you've got, like, this morning it was -1 where I was coming in. So if you're a 6 a.m.er and you're coming into a -1 degree gym, get warm.
Yeah, and if you're older as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
definitely. Number 4, is eating late at night bad for weight loss? This is an old one, isn't it?
Again, it's an energy in, energy out equation, so it doesn't really matter when that food comes in across the day. The only thing I would say that does directly impact the scale weight that people then see the next morning, because typically that's the time you'd weigh yourself. If you are eating late at night, there is a very good chance it's not going to digest very well. And I'm presuming people's dinners are not going to be the same, you know, night on night. Mm-hmm. I'm presuming you do, same as I do. I basically eat the same stuff every day. It just doesn't change. So I can predict what I'm going to weigh the next morning based on what I've eaten that day because it's the same stuff. But if you're going from, like, I don't know, a pizza one night to spaghetti bolognese the next, and then, like, I don't know, like beef and rice the next day, your body weight will fluctuate depending on, firstly, how heavy was the meal, but secondly, how much of it digested. So what you can typically see late at night is if your meal is really protein and really fat heavy, it will digest a lot slower. So it makes no difference to fat loss, but scale weight might be affected by it.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to how many calories you've consumed at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what doesn't matter what time of day it does. Let's say within a 24-hour period over the 7 days, it's always those 24-hour periods of like, what have you actually had in those things? It doesn't matter what time you've had it, because at the end of the day, you could pouch 3,500 calories for breakfast.
Yeah, and then not eat for the rest of the day.
Not eat for the rest of the day, and you would gain weight.
Yeah.
Whereas, say you split your meals out and you still had a 800 calorie meal at the end of the day, but still within that 3,500 calories, it'd be exactly the same.
I think the way that people need to shift when they look at calories is it is just a unit of energy. That's all it is. In the same way that meters is a unit of distance, calories is just a unit of energy. So just look at it, when you do look at your calories, just treat it like money is the way that I look at it. Spend it on the right things, because we've all probably had something every now and then that you go, I regret spending my calories on that. Like, I want a calorie refund. If that is even a thing, I want a refund on that.
It is, but that's called an eating disorder.
But yeah. And I just look at it and go, just make the smart decisions. Like, don't give in to sort of short-term gratification, because I know a lot of people do, because usually by the time you've finished whatever that thing is, you sit there and go, actually, it wasn't worth it. And I think a lot of people build certain foods up in their head to be, it's going to be this great massive thing, and then you get disappointed by it. So again, just see your calories as, either see it as a form of energy or a form of currency, and just spend it on the things that you actually want to be eating that then help you move towards whatever goal it is.
Yeah, and I suppose the other way you can look at it is like, you can use timing, because the question is eating late at night bad for weight loss? People use things as a timed eating approach. So probably to the people who are saying, like, I stop eating at 6 at night.
Yeah.
That means they're not going to be eating till, say, 8, 9 in the morning, which is going to be a 14-hour fast, without calling it a 14-hour fast.
Yeah.
So that in itself, say the people who are pushing that type thing, or you've heard it somewhere of, well, I stop eating at 6, so this is where obviously the myths and rumours will kick in.
I remember back when I started, there was a whole thing about, like, your digestive system shuts down at 7 p.m.
Oh, yes.
And you look at it and you're like, right, so just universally, everyone at 7 p.m, it just shuts down. You're like, do we really think that happens? It's like your digestive system, yes, will shut down overnight, and it will start to stall after a prolonged period of not eating, but it doesn't just go, oh, it's 7 p.m. That's it. It's time to go to bed. It's like, at the end of the day, just if you're going to go to sleep at, let's say, 10 p.m, I probably wouldn't eat, I would say at least about an hour and a half before bed. Give whatever you're eating enough time to digest, so that then when you wake up in the morning, you don't step on the scales and go like, I've gained a kilo, what's that about? Just undigested food.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, it isn't, is eating late at night bad for weight loss? No.
Perfectly fine.
Can you spot reduce fat in specific areas like your belly or arms?
No, again,
end it there.
Yeah, your body will take it and store it from wherever it sees fit, and it will always take the path of least resistance. And unfortunately, we probably all know somebody that, regardless of gaining a little bit of body fat, they'll have abs year round. But then likewise, the way that I explain it is, look at their other body parts. Do their other body parts look as lean? The argument is no. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it takes and it stores from wherever is easiest in that moment to come from. And I'm sure that when you diet, you will see certain areas that lean out before others. For me,
it's always me thighs last.
Always my back first, and it's then always the midsection last. So it's just so person dependent. And I know there's a lot of people out there that will turn around and go, oh, but I just can't get rid of this little bit, and oh, it's that stubborn body fat area. And it's like, well, it's not stubborn, it's just the last to go. So you might need to diet even harder to get rid of that little bit. And we know that these bits do disappear, because bodybuilding is a sport that is based off of getting that body fat dead low, so that you can see every visible striation and groove within that muscle. So we know that everyone has the capability to do it.
And those aren't standing on stage with a belly. Like, they're not absolutely ripped everywhere.
Yeah, and then they've still got a gut.
Yeah, like a jiggly belly.
At the end of the day, wherever you want to see body fat go from, it will go from. But the way that I look at it is, the reason why people have like an attachment to maybe that specific area is probably because it's the only bit that doesn't go. Like, people that have abs year round don't care that they have abs year round, because they have abs year round. So it's not a concern to them. Whereas they might be really conscious of how much fat is on their thighs or on their calves or on their arms. It's always the bit that you can't get rid of that subconsciously you'll fixate on. Mm-hmm. So if you diet hard enough, it will disappear.
It is always if you can diet hard enough. I always use this, like if someone says, oh look, I'm trying to just get rid of this bit.
Yeah.
And like everywhere else is fine. And I'll say, right, can I grab you? Like, and you'll be able to grab anywhere. And it's like, look, you've still got fat here, fat here, fat here, fat here. You've got to get rid of that before you can think of that. If you think that's like your problem area. So I always use this as a technique. So I'll say, right, like clench your fist like that. Pinch the back of your hand. That's like very, very, like no body fat there.
Yeah, just skin basically.
Is everywhere else
like that?
like that, and they'll be pinching. No, it's okay. You've got a long way to go.
As well, obviously, think about it as well, like from like I guess like an evolutionary perspective. We are designed to keep excess body fat in those organ-based areas, both male and female. It's a protective mechanism. It's also there to bring heat into the body as well. So you'll find that when you do get people that are exceptionally lean year-round, I'm freezing cold all the time. And yes, I could put more body fat on, but I don't want to. But as I say, the cost of that is I'm cold. I'm always cold. So you see, I've got 4 layers on at the moment. I've got my gilet over there somewhere that's got a heater built into it. But that's the price that you pay for that. So again,
especially in North England.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a shock to the system. But you've got to look at it and go, body fat is there for a reason, and as well from like a hormonal perspective, for just having body fat in there, this is how we function at a normal level. I got my blood work taken the last time I dieted, and it was horrendous. My estrogen was through the roof. My free testosterone was quite literally in the bin. Like, it's not healthy to be exceptionally lean, but what I want people to think of, that doesn't mean it's also an excuse to go and put on loads of body fat, because that is equally unhealthy in the opposite direction. But you do need someone in order to function like a normal human being.
Yeah, I mean, it's straight away, it's to the point of like, say, where I say really lean out to where I am now. Like, yes, my abs are on display, but I'm not like shreddy breck.
Yeah.
But I feel brilliant where I am now.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference of it. It's like, yes, be lean, but you
it's
don't
to
have
a degree, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always to a degree. That's the coffee machine. Does muscle turn into fat if you stop working out?
No, they are two very independent things. They're two different tissues. You can't turn fat into muscle, you can't turn muscle into fat. They are two entirely different things that grow, again, at different rates. You've got to, the way that I look at it, because I know they're both in the body, so people think that, it can kind of shift between the two. But I look at it, and the best example, like being in here right now, is the difference between a barbell and a dumbbell. They're two different things. A barbell can't turn into a dumbbell can't turn into a barbell. They are two very different things. And yes, when you train, there is a degree where you can put on, obviously, muscle mass as you are dropping body fat, because the processes of dropping body fat and gaining muscle mass are independent processes, which is maybe where that thought process came from. Because it was that whole thing of people going, I weigh the same all the time, but I'm looking leaner and I'm putting on more muscle, so is one turning into the other? But just think, you've got two different things happening at the same time. You've got muscle growth and fat loss happening, as I say, in conjunction. So two independent things, but you can grow and lose them at the same time.
But there could, I think a little bit probably is around that is like, because fat is an energy source.
Yeah.
And you are growing muscle, so it's like,
yeah, I do get what you mean.
You are using that energy.
And I guess energy can't be created nor destroyed, so...
Yeah, so you are growing it.
But that's saying you're using fat as a fuel source potentially for growth.
Yeah.
So it doesn't turn into it, but the byproduct of using it is that you create something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess if when you're thinking of it that way, you could possibly word it like that. But yeah, at the end of the day, they're two different things.
But it doesn't turn.
No, they physically, it can't wake up today and go, you know what? I'm making the shift.
Yeah,
I'm becoming muscle now. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite, have
Oh,
that
the question was actually the other way around, was it? Does muscle turn into fat if you stop working out?
But no, I mean, the best way actually that I can describe this is, let's say the calories that you eat doesn't change. So if you stop training, the data is very, very clear. In as little as a week, your muscles will start to atrophy. So
But very, very small. This is like so minuscule, isn't it?
But you've got to think, in order to keep muscle at either what we'd, I guess, call it a maintenance point or growing, it needs stimulus. And if you're not feeding it stimulus, your body's really smart and it will turn around and go, I don't need this. Because having muscle mass is not evolutionary advantageous. Your body will go, well, actually, from an evolutionary perspective, we want to be small, we want to be slight, we want to be quite slender. So the body will go, well, I don't
Depending
need
on your
it.
environment.
Yeah.
So if you're a farmer, you're going to be holding onto that muscle mass.
Because you need it for your job.
Yeah, you need it for your job.
But if you're desk bound,
if you're a typical
you don't
person,
need it. So the way to look at it is, let's say you're eating the same amount of food and your body's going, actually, I don't need that muscle mass anymore. But as I say, energy in is the same. Because you're not training anymore, you've changed the energy outside of the equation, so you're potentially just not burning as many calories. So you now think resistance training is gone, So then where do these excess calories go towards? If there's no stimulus for growth, it will then just be body fat that's put on. And it's why typically you'll see people as they get older and older, their scale weight might not change, but their appearance does. Because again, like, it's a use it or lose it game. If your body isn't going to use it for anything of value, it will just get rid. And unfortunately, if food intake stays the same, where's that food going to go to? It's going to be body fat.
Yes. Are carbs the enemy when it comes to losing weight?
No. They're definitely a lever that you can pull from, but they are absolutely not the enemy. They're probably the easiest macronutrient to reduce when dieting, because you've got to look, each of the three of them has a function. Obviously, protein from a muscle stimulation standpoint, fats just from a hormonal standpoint, and then carbs, primary sort of energy source, especially for this type of training as well. But when you look at your total calorie equation, you need a baseline level of protein to make sure that, you know, you can retain tissue. You need a baseline level of fats so that you can function effectively. So carbs are probably the one that you would pull away from, as long as you can keep an amount in that still leaves training being productive. Mm-hmm. Because I've had a few diets where the last sort of 2 to 3 weeks I've been on literally zero carb. Obviously, it will, I say zero, you'll still have like the odd bit of like cruciferous vegetables coming in, but it's not. It's
50 grams max.
Yeah, it's not an amount that you can turn around and go, oh, today's workout's been fueled by broccoli and carrots. Like, it's, they digest so slowly that I'm probably not even using those carbs in that session. So you look at it and go, it is the lever that you can pull from the easiest. Especially if you get a client coming in at 3,000 calories a day, you're looking at that going, you can probably assume, 200 grams of protein, maybe 60 to 70 fats. They might be on about 400 grams of carbs. So straight away, you can look at it and go, right, let's get rid of 100 of them. Yeah. Because you can still train effectively, function effectively, but now straight off the bat, I've just removed 400 calories. And it was easy as that.
They could have, like, say, scrambled egg on toast where they're having 3 slices of bread. Yeah. It's like, right, let's reduce 2 of them out.
Yeah, or even something like if they're going with like sourdough bread, could I swap the sourdough for like Danish bread that has nearly half the calories in it, but you're still feeling like you're having toast as well? Yeah. Or like, you know, for example, if you're somebody that I love jasmine and basmati rice, but I know that long grain rice has about half the calories in it. So it's one of those where from like a food volume perspective, I still feel like I'm getting rice.
I didn't know that between the rice.
Jasmine rice and sushi white rice is the worst for it.
I'm jasmine
sky
rice.
high.
I buy a big bag every
I love the stuff. But yeah, carbs, definitely not the enemy. Certainly a lever that you can pull from, but view them as a fuel source. Because when people, like I wrote a couple of notes in my phone for this podcast, and a lot of people go on about the anabolic window. Mm-hmm. And again, from a protein standpoint, it's not a thing, but it is a thing from carb perspective. You need carb uptake pre, post, and depending on the person, intra-workout, depending on the type of activity you do, especially if it is long duration. Like, you look at like what Alex and Ben do, like they need carbs intra-workout, because if they don't, they're going to get to the end of the session, they're going to flag so hard, blood sugar's going to tank, so they need that. But you've got to look at it from a resistance training standpoint. It's what fuels you. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, if your body then starts to look at protein and fats and go, do you know what, I can take from that, they're being drawn away from their primary function. So we look at protein and fats as what we call carbohydrate sparing. They allow carbs to do their job without pulling from anything else. So yeah, don't view them as the enemy. Just make sure you're eating stuff that digests well and have enough to train.
Carbs are the best.
Yes.
Carbs are literally the best.
Are.
And that's the thing, but like, see me and Dan, we are lean, and we probably have more carbs than you can look at. Like when you think, oh wow, look at all the carbs what they eat over the course of a day, and it's like, yes, and like they probably don't even eat that much, but they want to reduce it further, and it's carbs are there. But I think one of the big myths around this is because you can reduce carbs straight away and you lose weight dramatically. But that's because of the water, what it holds, and this is where it's all from.
For every 1 gram of carbohydrates in your system, it holds anywhere between 3 to 4 grams of water. So I'm taking in, it's about 350 grams of carbohydrates a day. So just from that alone, I could be holding on to over 1 kilo's worth of water in my system. Whether that is, you know, flowing through bloodstream, whether that is actually sat within the muscles themselves. So if I suddenly decided next week I'm going to go down to 0 carb, go completely keto, I'll lose 1.5 kilos, like literally like that, but it's not fat loss.
Yeah.
It's fat loss if I'm in a deficit as well, but it's not to that degree. So you've got to look at, it's not a case of, great, I've seen this on the scales, but it's why are you seeing that on the scales? And I think with food and nutrition education, it's generally really on the poor side. So people don't understand it. They just get this short-term gratification of scale dropped, great, but then starts to bump up and they can't work out why, because they're eating the same thing day after day.
Yeah, I recently seen somebody who's on a low-carb diet, best thing in the world.
Yeah. It's the best thing until it's not the best thing.
Best thing in the world, how much they're losing, blah, 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 blah. But then I've literally seen them post pictures of them in the pub with pints and stuff like that. So it's like all of that, what you have lost, say, in the last few months, it's like, well, goodbye. Because
also as well.
And they're going to shit the pants when they jump on the scale and be
I was going to say, like, I was literally going to say, they're literally going to shit their pants, because you've got to think about what things the carbohydrates contain that actually help us function. Like, a massive one is fiber. Yeah. People drastically undereat fiber. You're only going to get it from carb sources, whether that is, fruits with the skin on, whether it's vegetables, whether it's carb sources like oats. So you've got to look at it purely from a standpoint of what is this particular food actually giving me. So, like, again, as much as I love rice, it's not very nutritionally dense, but could you get in oats? Could you get in potatoes? Could you add in extra veg to your meals to bulk it out? Like, it does also have a purpose apart from just training. There are other things to it, and I think people forget that sometimes.
So, yes, what was the question again? Are carbs the enemy?
Eat your carbs.
Yeah, well, are carbs the enemy when it comes to losing weight? No, they're not. They're absolutely fine. Just all the calorie balance again.
It's just a shame that, as I say, they are the easiest thing generally to cut out.
I think we'll do this last one here. Should you always feel sore after a workout for it to be effective? I think you'll like this one.
Yeah, so soreness and effective training are two things that they're not linked. So when people think about soreness, it's obviously, it can either range from that sort of dull, achy sensation all the way up to literally the muscle is sore to the touch and it hurts to contract it, it hurts to move. We've all trained legs for the first time after a while and you can't sit down, you can't stand up, everything's in agony. But when you look at what muscle soreness is, and the most accurate theory to date is it's nerve spindle damage. So you've got to look at that word there. Damage is not a good thing. So people chase training and they chase this sort of muscle damage, they chase breakdown. But you've got to look at that and go, well, it causes a recovery hole. It changes the way that you perceive the task in front of you. So if you've trained chest on Monday and you try and train chest again on Thursday and you're sore, there's no way you're lifting as heavy because your brain's instantly detected it and gone like, this hurts, this is actually painful, it's sore. So straight away you can't apply the same effort to it. And if you're applying less effort now on Thursday than you were on Monday, are you getting ineffective sessions? If your logbook's going backwards or it's staying the same for too long a period of time because you're too sore all the time, it's not a good thing. And you've got to look at why you get sore. And it's validation in the way that these guys train here because the cycle changes every 4 weeks. That first week they're sore as hell. Second week it's there a little bit, but by third and fourth it's gone. Yeah. So we generally know that with neural adaptations, soreness disappears. Once you actually get used to a movement, it will start to go. The only time that it changes, the only time it creeps back in generally is a new exercise comes in, change of technique to an existing exercise. If you really change the rep range, like if we today, when we train push, if we'd gone from 6 to 8 to sets of like 15 to 20, you're going to be sore. You're going to be sore because you think about how many additional reps you've performed. Yes, the load is lighter, but you think about how much more fatigue you've generated. So we do, let's say we've done that over 4 sets. You might at the high end, 4 times 8, looking at 32 reps there. Yeah. But potentially at sets of 15 to 20, you could have gone from 32 reps up to 80. That drastic jump in volume, that's soreness right there. Yeah. So we've got to look at it, go, when you train a muscle at longer lengths, you're going to get sore. When you train with higher volumes than expected, you're going to get sore. When you change rep ranges, you're going to get sore. When you change the exercise completely, you're going to get sore. These things are not conducive to muscle growth because you want consistency. You want to be able to get good at the movement. And at the end of the day, I know people don't view the gym in the same way, but I used to play football a lot as a kid. It's the same way. You're learning a new skill and you're just getting better and better at it over time. You know, when you play football, you do a step over for the first time. You're like, wow, I've just done that. That looks great. And then you perform it on somebody and you get past them. It's the same as a bench press. It's a skill. I know a lot of people view the gym in a different way, but it is a skill. It's learning motor and movement patterns. So the way I'd look at it is don't chase soreness. I think chasing soreness is a rabbit hole in and of itself. And you'll get to the point where in order to get sore, you need to do such a high volume of exercise that you look at it and you go, half of that session was a waste. It's not doing anything.
So how do you feel like on that one? Because for me, so I don't want to be fucking super sore or anything.
It's good validation that you've trained hard.
I like to feel like the next day, I feel that. But not to the point of like can't stand up.
Yeah, it shouldn't ever be debilitating, and it shouldn't really ever carry over to the next time you train that session. So obviously here it's almost on like a 5-day cycle. So you train today, you'll do the next session in 5 days time. You shouldn't be feeling it in 5 days time, because if you felt it then, you've probably done too much volume. So don't get me wrong, like I'll train legs in a minute. I can tell you already now, by about 10 p.m. this evening I'll be feeling it, but by about midday tomorrow it's gone. And it's good because then by, I think it's Friday I train legs again. So if I've got that soreness feeling creeping in by next Friday, I got to look at it and go, something in that session has not gone right. Now, there will be cases, especially if you train at a commercial gym, where you don't have access to the same bit of kit every session. I'm not a fan of waiting around. I can't be bothered to it. I'm on a time crunch. So if the hack squat I want is taken, I'm jumping on another one. And yes, it might feel different. It might bring in a little bit of soreness, but at least I can turn around and go, it is probably because of X, Y, Z. But let's say across a rotation, if you've done 6 push sessions in a row and you've come out of every one going, I feel equally as bad every single time, there's possibly something that needs changing, because it shouldn't be that bad. Again, we're not chasing damage, we're chasing growth. And at the end of the day, the more frequently you can perform that session with adequate recovery time in between, the more you'll get from it. Whereas if you're coming in and you're absolutely spent before you've even done your warm-up, it's going to be a hard session. And you've got to look at it and go, is it going to be productive? Is it going to be conducive to actually getting a good session out of it? Because I've trained before when I've been sore. It's horrible. Your logbook numbers drop, your mindset starts to go as well, and you're thinking, I'm getting weaker. But the reality is there possibly was one of two things, either lacking recovery or too much work in the session.
Yeah, it's
and it's a balance, it's a fine line, and it is different for everyone as well. I'm somebody, and Sarah will hate this, I've not trained my rear delts in about 3 years. Don't touch them, don't need to. I do a wide grip row and they grow adequately off that. Whereas Sarah needs direct targeted work. So you've got to look at it and go, from a muscle growth standpoint, it is also very different. And from a recovery standpoint, the same thing applies. So I don't think I've been sore off an upper session probably in about 6 months. My lower sessions will still give me that little bit of soreness that same day and into the next morning, but then it disappears. But I know some people that religiously, regardless of how much work we do, as long as effort is high, they're going to feel it the next day. But then as long as by 2-3 days it's gone, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
Because you've got to look at it from a client perspective as well. And although low volume probably is a better way of training, if I said to somebody, right, we're only doing 2 sets here, their head's already like, really? Is that it? They feel like they can't get enough from it. Yeah. So sometimes you have to dangle that carrot a little bit and go, you know what, just do an extra set. Yeah. Like you've got to give in to the client a little bit, because at the end of the day, it's still a service that's being provided and they want to feel like they've trained.
Yes, yeah.
So this is why, like on the final set on the 7 a.m. group today, I just said, look, we've got 10 minutes left. I'm not going to get you to do a finisher purely because I don't believe in them. But I was like, right, last set, just go to failure. Just do as many reps as you can, ignore the rep range, just keep pushing through. Yeah. And they like it because they come out of that final set going, I feel spent, I feel done, but I don't feel like I'm dragging my feet through the session. And that's that fine line.
It's mad because some people will do, like, say, let's say for me, let's say I got 3 sets of 90 on the bench, 8 reps each one, and I was sore day 1 with it. Yeah. But then the next time I did it, but like say it was a struggle, but then the next time I actually did 3 sets of 8 and I didn't feel sore. It's like some people think, well, I haven't worked hard enough there.
Whereas actually the way I see that is the adaptations that are necessary. So then you look at it and go, well, actually, if you got through those 8 reps easier and you're now no longer sore off of it, is there a possibility to slide a 1.25 either side and go up to 92.5? And that's the way that people have got to look at it. Like, the gym never gets easier. It should really stay the same difficulty all the way throughout. Because if the gym's got easier, you're not doing something right. You're potentially not pushing yourself hard enough. Like, yes, 6 months down the line, if you return to the same weights that you had on session 1, they should feel easy. They should now feel like a warm-up. But the gym should feel almost equal every session. That you should be applying the same effort and matching effort and load equally all the way through.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No
really good.
Sorry, my hands are freezing cold.
No, it's all right.